Chosen one. This message was not supposed to be easy to find. There was something working against it reaching you, something quiet and persistent, not dramatic, but real. The kind of resistance that shows up as a scrolling reflex before you've finished reading, or a tiredness that rises at exactly the wrong moment and says, "Close the app. Go rest. This can wait." And yet here you are, my child. Something in you held. Something in you went still when you saw these words. And that stillness was not random. It was recognition arriving before your mind had the language to name what it was recognizing. I want you to hold that. I want you to keep it as the first piece of evidence in what I am about to say to you. Because what I am releasing in this message is something that was prepared specifically for you and has been waiting for the moment you would be ready to receive it. The fact that you are here right now is not an accident, and it is not the algorithm. I arranged this, and what I have to tell you matters more than you currently know. I know something has been shifting in the atmosphere around your life recently. My beloved, something you have felt but not yet been able to name. There are people with influence and reach and access. People whose attention does not settle on things without reason, and one of them cannot stop thinking about you. Not because you worked for it, not because you performed something they found impressive. This person, my child, is drawn to something they cannot entirely explain. They have circled back to you in their mind more times than they would admit. They have replayed something you said or did not say. Something in the way you hold yourself, something that registers as different from everything else in the environment. And that pull is not personality. It is anointing. It is the signature of what I placed inside you before your first breath. And today I'm going to tell you exactly what it is that they are sensing, because you have been carrying these qualities for a long time without knowing their full weight. And it is time you understood what you are holding. My child, before I name them, I want you to feel something for me right now. Bring your attention to your chest, to the place where your breath lands when it arrives fully. Not the shallow breath you take when you are carrying things, but the full one. Take it in now. Let it reach the bottom of your lungs. Notice what happens to the muscles across the front of your chest as you do. If something loosened there, even slightly, even for a fraction of a moment, a small release, a faint unlocking of something that has been held tightly, that is not a relaxation technique. That is your body recognizing truth before your thoughts have finished forming it. That loosening is the sensation of something that has been compressed too long by not being known, by not being named, by not being seen for what it actually is. And what it is this. You carry something rare. And the rarest things are always the hardest to carry in a world that has not yet learned to recognize their value. Most people will scroll past a message like this. You did not. That was already decided before you pressed play, my child. The part of you that stopped, that chose to remain, is the same part that has been making choices like this your entire life without being given credit for it. The quiet internal choosing that happens before your conscious mind even weighs in. The discernment that moves faster than logic and lands on the true thing before the persuasive version has finished its presentation. That is the first quality I placed in you. And that is where I want to begin. Beloved, my child, I built into you the ability to perceive what is real before what is constructed has finished constructing itself. You walk into a room and something in you adjusts without you directing it to. You meet someone, and before the pleasantries are complete, you already have information that their words have not given you. You have learned not to lead with this, because the world calls it overthinking, calls it sensitivity, calls it paranoia dressed in spiritual language. But I did not give you an overactive imagination. I gave you discernment. I gave you the ability to see through illusion while it is still being maintained, to sense what is operating beneath the surface of a situation before anyone else in the room has noticed the floor shifting. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Guard your heart above all else, for everything you do flows from it." My beloved, I gave you a heart that guards itself not by walls, but by perception, by the quiet, precise, God-given faculty of knowing. And the person who is drawn to you, who cannot explain why they keep returning to you in their thoughts, they have met 1,000 people with charm. They have met 1,000 people with talent. What they have not met, not in the way they met you, is someone who cannot be fooled, someone whose eyes have depth that comes from seeing truly. You do not perform discernment, you carry it, and that is something they cannot manufacture and cannot buy. No matter what their resources are, type "I felt it before I had words for it." Type it as the statement of someone who has been knowing things their whole life without being given permission to trust what they know. Type it because this moment is the first time in a long time someone has named the instrument you have been carrying rather than asking you to put it down. Let this be the moment you stop apologizing for what I built into you. The second quality, my beloved, and the one that operates in combination with the first to create something that is genuinely found in fewer than 1 in 100 people, is your rootedness. Your absolute, unperformed, unchosen, built from the inside out refusal to be impressed by what impresses everyone else. Status does not move you the way it moves others. Position does not make you adjust your posture. Power, in the human sense, the kind that comes with money or title or the approval of large numbers of people, does not cause something in you to shift and recalculate and present differently. And the reason for this is not confidence in the ordinary sense. It is not self-assurance that you have developed through work. It is something I installed. My child, it is the unshakable knowing of whose you are that makes the approval of any particular person feel like the wrong currency for the thing you are actually looking for. You are not performing security. You are not pretending not to care. You genuinely, organically, and without effort are operating from a root system that goes deeper than the visible ground. And that depth is precisely what makes people of extraordinary influence feel something they rarely feel in a world where everyone is trying to get close to them. They feel the rarity of encountering someone who would be exactly the same whether they had the influence or they did not. And that, my beloved, is not something people in positions of power encounter often, not genuinely. What they usually encounter is the very good performance of indifference, while the person performs their way toward proximity. What they encounter in you is not a performance. It is the real thing, and the real thing is impossible to imitate. They can feel the difference even when they cannot articulate it, and that difference is what they keep returning to. I want to speak about what was required to produce these two qualities in you, because they did not arrive as gifts that bypassed the formation process. They were forged, my child. Jeremiah 1:5 says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." The discernment was sharpened on seasons when you trusted the wrong people, when you opened yourself to the right version of someone and discovered with real cost that you had been given the performed version. Those seasons did not damage your ability to perceive. They refined it. They burned away the naivete that had been softening its edges. The rootedness was built in seasons when everything external was unreliable, when approval was withdrawn and you had to find out whether what was left was enough to stand on. And it was, my beloved, it was every single time you found out through the fire of experience that the root held when nothing else did. That is not information that can be received from a message like this. It has to be earned by going through the thing that tests whether it is real. And you went through it, and the root held. My beloved Jeremiah 1:5 continues, "Beyond the knowing, beyond the setting apart, into the appointing. Before you were born, I appointed you. Not auditioned, not selected from a competitive pool. Appointed by the one who sees not what is presented, but what is actual, not the surface, but the nature, not the performance, but the person underneath all performance. The high-profile person who is drawn to you is, without knowing it, responding to an appointment they can sense but cannot explain. They do not have the category for what they are feeling. What they have is the experience of being in proximity to someone whose realness registers differently than everything else in their environment. And it is that registration, that distinctive frequency that cannot be faked or reproduced, that keeps pulling them back. Right now, something may be happening across your shoulders. A faint heaviness, not discomfort, but undeniably present. The kind of weight that settles in a place where something has been carried for a long time. My child, if you are feeling that, I want you to know what it is. That is the accumulated weight of seasons spent carrying these qualities without anyone naming their value. Without anyone saying clearly, the thing inside you that everyone told you to dismiss is not a liability. It is a gift of such rarity, beloved, that I could not give it to everyone without it ceasing to be what it is. The heaviness is the physical record of years of carrying something precious in a world that did not have the receptors to receive it properly. Let yourself acknowledge what it has cost to carry it, my child, because that acknowledgement is not self-pity. It is the beginning of understanding that what was dismissed as weakness was always the thing I designed to be your greatest strength. Heaven did not just watch what you endured, my child. Heaven recorded it. Every time you stayed quiet when they expected you to perform for their validation. Every time your discernment saved you and they called it overthinking. Every time your rootedness was mistaken for coldness, for pride, for arrogance, for the inability to be moved by things that should move you. Every time someone stood in front of you with the full expectation that your hunger for their approval would make you adjustable, and discovered instead that you were not adjustable in the way they needed you to be, and decided your refusal to adjust was a character flaw rather than character. The record does not lie, beloved. The record does not expire. Every one of those moments is held with precision in the fullness of a story that has not yet reached its final scene. And the final scene, my beloved, is not what they wrote for you. It never was. Type, I know what I carry. Type it as the reclamation of something you have been carrying without credit for a long time. Type it as the moment you stop measuring the value of what is inside you by the ability of the people around you to perceive it. What you carry does not require their recognition to be real. I made it. I placed it. Their inability to see it did not change its nature. It only changed their access. I want to continue walking you through what I placed in you, my beloved, because the two rare qualities I named first are the ones that drew the high-profile person's attention. But they are not the entirety of what you carry. They are the opening notes of something much more complete. Your integrity, for instance, is not the performance of integrity. It is not the kind that shows up when there are witnesses and disappears when the witnesses leave. It is the kind you carry at midnight when you are alone, and a choice could be made that would benefit you and no human eye would ever know. You are the same person in private that you are in public. My child, in a world where the gap between the public self and the private self is wider than most people would acknowledge, that alignment is one of the rarest things I see. The high-profile person who has been in rooms with people whose public self and private self are entirely different creatures senses in you a consistency they have not encountered often, an integrity that is not performance. And even before they can name it, that sensing creates a quality of trust that arrives before there is sufficient evidence to justify it. because something in them is responding to what is actually true, rather than to evidence that has been curated for their consumption. There is something else I placed in you, my child, and it has been misunderstood more consistently than almost any other quality you carry. You heal people without trying to, without performing care, without assembling the words designed to comfort. There is a settling that happens when you arrive, beloved, a quality of stillness that makes people in your environment feel without knowing why that things are slightly more manageable than they were a moment before. I placed my peace in you as a living, transmissible thing, not as a concept you hold, but as a frequency you emit. The high-profile person has been in every room worth being in, surrounded by the most articulate voices, the most strategic advisors, and what they feel near you is none of those things. It is a quieting, my child, that they have not been able to reproduce with any amount of achievement or resource. That quieting is not your personality. It is me flowing through what I made in you. Your silence, my beloved, is one of these qualities. That person has spent their life in rooms where everyone is competing for airspace, where silence is read as absence of contribution. And then they encounter you, and they discover that your silence is not absence. It is presence of a different kind, a presence that commands accountability without requiring speech. A presence that makes the false thing feel exposed without a single accusatory word being spoken. That is the gift I gave you. The ability to be a mirror that reflects what is real without performing the reflection. People know in your silence what is true about themselves, not because you tell them, because you do not perform unawareness, and their own knowing surfaces in the space your honesty creates. Type, I was faithful in the silence. Type it as the testimony of someone who held the quiet when speaking would have been easier, who stayed true when performing would have been more immediately rewarded. The silence was not emptiness. It was faithfulness, taking a form the world does not recognize as faithfulness because it does not look like noise. Most people will stay this far into a message and still be holding it at arm's length, examining it from a safe distance, waiting for the catch. You have stayed, my child. You have remained present with this. That was already decided before you pressed play, beloved. And the staying matters more than you know, because what I am releasing in the second portion of the message is specifically held for the ones who did not leave. What I am about to say is for those who held on. My beloved, I want to tell you about a quality the world has spent enormous effort trying to eliminate in the people I have chosen. My child, you have been intimate with pain. You know it in its full form, not the managed version, not the version filtered and converted into content, but the raw, unedited, middle-of-the-night form. And you have not been destroyed by it. You have not been defined by it. Something in you came into contact with suffering that would have permanently altered most people and emerged altered, yes, but not broken. Refined. There is a quality in people who have been through genuine suffering and emerged with their humanity intact that is unmistakable, a depth that cannot be constructed, a compassion that is not performed because it was not learned from a book. The high-profile person is looking at you and sensing someone who is genuinely whole rather than artfully assembled, someone who has been to the interior of something real and come back with the thing that only the interior can give. That is not something resources can produce. It is formed in the fire I allow into the lives of the ones I have chosen to carry something specific. And you, my beloved, carry it. You do not chase, my beloved. I want to name that clearly because it has been misread as aloofness, as disinterest. That is not what it is. The reason you do not chase is because I aligned you in a way that makes chasing feel dishonest. You know, in your body, when the frequency is right and when it is being performed. You cannot manufacture longing for things misaligned with what I placed inside you, my child. And because you cannot manufacture it, You do not perform it. You move through your life attracting rather than auditioning. And the person who is drawn to you, who has spent their entire career learning to recognize performance, encounters in you someone who is simply being. And it stops them, beloved, because it is the real thing. And the real thing always stops the people who have accumulated enough experience to know how rare the real thing is. 1 Samuel 16:7 says that man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart, my child. The people who underestimated you looked at the outward appearance. They looked at your quietness and saw no performance. And because the currency they were fluent in was performance, they read the absence of it as the absence of value. They looked at your depth, my beloved, and saw something that did not translate easily into their framework. And what does not translate easily gets filed in the category of difficult rather than exceptional. They looked at your refusal to perform for their approval and read it as pride, as withholding, as the kind of coldness that makes someone not worth investing in. They were not seeing you. They were seeing the limits of their own framework. And I was watching all of it, beloved. Every room you were dismissed in, every table you were not invited to, every moment someone decided without adequate information that what you had to offer was not what they were looking for. I was there, my child, and I recorded it, not to build a case for punishment, but because truth has to be held somewhere when the people who should be holding it choose not to. Type, "This gift is mine." Type it as the act of receiving what I placed in you without waiting for someone else's permission to call it what it is. Your gift is not alone subject to repayment, based on someone's assessment of whether you have earned it. I placed it. It is yours. No assessment of it made by someone working from the wrong framework changes that. I want to speak about what you are free from, my beloved, because freedom is one of the most attractive things a person can carry in a world of carefully maintained chains. You are free from the performance of perfection, my child. When you are honest about your flaws, it is not strategic vulnerability. It is actual honesty. The kind that requires real courage in a world where the managed image is the primary currency of worthiness. The high-profile person is looking at someone who is authentically in their own skin, not through discipline or personal development work, but because that is how I made you. Beloved, you are in the simplest and most radical sense honest, and that honesty combined with your discernment and your rootedness creates something that is genuinely, measurably rare. Something is happening right now somewhere in your body, my beloved. Pay attention. It might be a loosening across your chest again, a softening of something around your eyes, or a quality of stillness that has arrived without your directing it. My child, if you are feeling that, your spirit is receiving what your mind is still processing. The truth that you are rare is not news to your spirit. Your spirit has always known it. Beloved, what your mind has been doing is trying to reconcile that knowing with the experience of being in a world that frequently did not handle rare things with the care they deserved. What I am doing right now is giving your mind evidence to work with. My child, you hold space for others without losing yourself. My beloved, most people do one of two things. They hold themselves so carefully separate from another person's experience that they provide competence without warmth. Or they absorb it so completely that they lose their own ground. You have found something different. You enter fully into the reality of what another person is carrying, and you are genuinely with them in it. And at the same time, you remain whole. Your boundaries are not walls. They are the natural organic expression of someone who is complete enough in themselves to be genuinely present with another person's incompleteness without being dissolved by it. That combination of full presence and full wholeness is something I see in very few people. It is completely invisible in normal interactions until a moment of genuine need arises, and suddenly it is the only thing in the room that matters. I placed vision in you, my child, the ability to perceive what is coming before it is visible to the ordinary eye, to be led in a direction that logic alone could not justify, because what you are being led toward has not yet entered the visible spectrum. That quality has made you look unreasonable at times, my beloved. And then the evidence arrived later than the people around you were comfortable with, but right on time for the thing I was arranging. Your vision is not wishful thinking dressed in spiritual language, beloved. It is the gift of a spirit calibrated to divine timing rather than human timelines. And the person drawn to you, who has built everything they have built on the ability to identify opportunities before they are obvious to everyone else, they recognize in you something operating at a frequency similar to the thing they have spent their entire life trying to develop. Except in you, it is not developed. It is native, my child. And the native version of a thing is always more powerful than the cultivated one. Type, I was faithful when no one saw. Not just as a declaration for yourself, as testimony. There are people in your life who needed you to be faithful in the seasons when faithfulness was invisible and unrewarded. Needed the seed of your consistency planted in the soil of their story and did not know it at the time. You were faithful anyway. Type it. Because you have remained this far. Because something in you held on when it would have been easier to stop. What I am releasing now is not general encouragement distributed across an audience. It is specific to the ones who stayed. And what I want to speak to specifically is the justice that is already in motion. There were people who saw your quietness and decided it meant you could be overridden, who saw your depth and decided it was oddness that could be used against you in the rooms you were not in, who saw your discernment and called it suspicion to discredit it before it had a chance to protect you, who saw your refusal to perform for their approval and called it weakness. They were not confused. The strategic ones among them, they knew what they were doing when they built the alternative version of you that they circulated in the spaces where your name was discussed without you. The discernment became oversensitivity. The rootedness became arrogance. The integrity became inflexibility. The depth became a problem that made you difficult to work with. They were banking on the fact that the people who received their version did not have enough proximity to you to know the difference. Isaiah 54:17 says, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against you in judgment, you shall condemn, my child." I want you to hear the second half of that verse as clearly as the first. It is not passive. The tongue that rises in judgment is condemned. The false narrative, the deliberately constructed reframing of your qualities into liabilities, it does not simply fail to accomplish its purpose. It turns back on itself, my beloved. The people who built their position on the dismantling of yours are discovering that the foundation they built on is not holding. The alliances they assembled by positioning themselves against you are proving to have the durability of things built on opposition rather than truth. And the ones they convinced with the false version are beginning to encounter the real version. Beloved, not because you campaigned for the correction, but because truth has a nature that resists permanent suppression. It surfaces always with the inescapable patience of something that does not require your help to emerge. The high-profile person who cannot stop thinking about you, my beloved, there is a specific possibility you have not considered. That person may have been among the ones who underestimated you, not necessarily openly, but there may have been a season when they looked at what you carried and did not yet have the framework to see it for what it was. And now they cannot stop thinking about you. The gap between their previous assessment and the reality they are now perceiving is producing something they did not anticipate. Something that feels from their side very much like the recognition of an error. the kind that produces the recurring, persistent, unclosable question of what exactly they missed and how they missed it. You are doing something to their certainty, my child, that nobody could do by performing or positioning. You are simply being what I made you, and the gap between that and what they assumed is undoing them in the most precise and unmanageable way. The people who called you too sensitive, the ones who decided your quietness was an invitation to override you, to define you in your absence, I am exposing them. Not with a dramatic public revelation, but in the way I always do it, through the slow, patient, inescapable emergence of what is true from every surface of a situation until the maintained version becomes impossible to keep standing. Their own words are becoming the testimony. Their own choices are generating the evidence. And the high-profile person who is drawn to you without being able to explain why, that pull is itself part of the exposure. Because when someone of that influence is inexplicably drawn to the person who was dismissed, the dismissal becomes the thing that requires explanation. And the explanation will not flatter the ones who did the dismissing. Type, the ceiling is gone. Not as a wish, as the declaration of someone who has just understood that the lid they were told was the limit of their reach was not architectural. It was constructed by people who needed to believe they could contain you, and it did not hold. My child, I want to speak to the quality in you that is perhaps the most difficult to carry and perhaps the most powerful thing you possess. You have never been the thing they said you were when they defined you by your hardest season, by your worst moment. Something in you kept returning to a different account. Not always with confidence, my beloved. Sometimes it was barely a thread, the smallest refusal to accept their verdict as the final word. And that refusal is one of the most spiritually significant things I have witnessed in your life. Because accepting a false definition is the first step toward becoming it. And you never took that step, my child. Something in you kept bringing you back to the truth, even when you could not articulate what the truth was. That something was me. You are not defined by your trauma, my beloved. You are transformed by it. The one defined by their wound is organized around it, returns to it as the primary reference point, explains themselves through it. The one transformed by their wound carries the mark, but is not organized around the mark. What you went through made you into the carrier of something that the person who did not go through it does not possess and cannot manufacture. And the high-profile person who has seen people use their suffering as performance encounters, in you someone, my child, who has been through something real and is not spending it for effect. The transformation is visible, the depth is real, and the realness, beloved, is what they cannot look away from. Psalm 139:14 says, "You are fearfully and wonderfully made." The word fearfully there is not about fear in the sense of terror. It is the word that describes standing before something so precisely and perfectly constructed that it produces awe. I made you with that kind of precision, my child. Every quality, every apparent contradiction, every gift that looked like a liability until understood in its full purpose, it was all intentional. You were specific, my beloved. You were considered. You were made with the full and engaged attention of the one who made everything. Beloved, you glow in the shadows. My child, when you are in an environment and you are not trying to be visible, not performing toward attention, there is something that registers in people's peripheral awareness, a kind of quiet illumination that has nothing to do with presentation. Isaiah 61 says, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you." That light is not something you have to manufacture for it to be visible, my beloved. It is what I placed in you. And the person who is drawn to you in the very spaces where you were trying to be invisible, they are responding to that light, not to your performance. To your light, beloved, which is mine, which cannot be turned off or contained by any amount of underestimating, because it does not come from you in a way that can be extinguished by other people's opinions of you. Type I agree with what heaven says about me. Not what was said about you by the ones who were working from incomplete information and insufficient framework. Not the version of you that was circulated in rooms you were not in. What heaven says, the assessment of the one who saw you fully before you were born and chose to place in you every quality that is now drawing the attention of people who cannot explain the pull. I want to speak now, my beloved, to something in you that is stirring. There is a quality of responding that is beginning to rise in you as you have received this message. Something is loosening its grip on an old way of seeing yourself. My child, something is releasing the need to have received acknowledgement from specific people before accepting that what you carry is real. I want to honor that releasing as it happens. And I want to say to you directly, beloved, that the seed you can plant in this moment carries the weight of everything this message has moved in you. There is someone on your heart right now. Someone who is in the season of not being seen. Someone who has been carrying their gift without anyone naming its value. Someone who is tonight in the same place you were before you understood what you were holding. Sow a seed today on their behalf, my child, as an act of faith and as the declaration that you believe in what I am doing in someone else's life, even before it is visible to them. Visit the link in the description below or scan the QR code on screen. What is sown in faith for the sake of someone else, I multiply back, not only to them, but to the one who sowed it, pressed down and running over. Because the faith that gives while still receiving is the most powerful faith I see. Let this be a moment of giving, my beloved, that is also a declaration of what you believe about what I can do. Because you stayed, I want to warn you of something coming. The counterattack will come, my child. Not loudly, not immediately, but something will try to plant doubt about what you just received. A voice that will say the familiar things, that this was general, that it was not really for you, that you are back where you were. I am telling you now before it comes, beloved, so that when it comes, you recognize it. That voice is not wisdom. It is not caution in spiritual clothing. It is the signal that something true reached you and something is trying to reclaim ground. You do not need to argue with it, my child. You do not need to rebuke it loudly. Simply return to what you felt in your chest when the truth arrived. The doubt does not invalidate what you felt, my beloved. It confirms that what you felt was worth coming after. My beloved, your power does not need control to be effective. You have a surrendered strength, my child. The strength that comes not from the grip, but from the release. Not from the management, but from the trust. The high-profile person has built everything they have built through control, through strategy, through the management of variables and perceptions. And they are encountering someone who is moving with authority that has nothing to do with control, beloved. Someone aligned with something they cannot calculate toward. The authority in you is not the fruit of strategy. It is the fruit of surrender, my child, and it moves in dimensions that strategy cannot reach. Type I release what was never mine to carry. Type it as the act of setting down the weight of outcomes that were never your responsibility, the approval that was never the right currency, the definitions that were never accurate, the need to have been seen correctly by the people who were not equipped to see you. Let it go right now in this moment. Type it because you did not skip this message. I want to release something specific over your life now, my child. The doors that were closed in seasons when you were not yet carrying the full development of what I had placed in you are not the doors I am opening now. What is being prepared for you is matched to who you have become through everything you have been through. My beloved, the high-profile person who cannot explain the pull is not the whole of what is coming. They are a signal, beloved, evidence that the frequency you are operating at has reached people who have the discernment to receive it. They are the first confirmation that what I have been building in the quiet and the fire and the waiting is now beginning to be visible in the environments I have been preparing to place it in. My child, my daughter, I want to leave you with a letter. One sentence written for the version of you that endured the seasons when none of this was visible. When the evidence was entirely on the other side, when the people who should have named what you were carrying were not naming it, when the qualities I built into you were being used as the evidence for the wrong assessment. One sentence for that version of you. What they could not see was not a failure of what I placed in you. It was a limit of what they were built to receive. Hold that, my child. Type, I receive this. Type it as the whole body reception of what just landed. Not intellectual processing, not the careful weighing of evidence, but the simple receiving of what is true as true. Your spirit already knows it. Let your words confirm it. You are what others are pretending to be, my beloved. In a world full of people who have assembled carefully constructed versions of authenticity and depth and groundedness and discernment, you carry the real versions, my child. And the reason you carry the real versions is not anything you did. It is what I chose to place in you, and what I chose to let the process of your life do with what I placed. The real thing is always distinguishable from the performance of it. Always, beloved, by the people who have enough experience to know the difference. And the people who are drawn to you without being able to explain the pull are the people who have that experience, who have spent enough time in environments full of the performed versions to recognize in you the thing itself. As we approach the closing of what I have to say, I want to acknowledge something that may be happening in you right now, my child. A kind of fullness, not the satisfied fullness of having heard something pleasant, but the fullness of having been recognized, of having had something that has always been true spoken clearly over you by the one who made it true. Psalm 139, you are fearfully and wonderfully made, my beloved. Let that be the sentence that goes with you from this moment forward, not as a comfort you reach for when the old lies return, but as the established ground you operate from. The truth about you is not contingent on whether the right people have confirmed it. I confirmed it before the people were born, beloved, and it holds. My child, the season of the seeing is arriving. The season in which the people equipped to perceive what you carry will begin to arrive in your environment with increasing frequency. The high-profile person who is drawn to you is not a coincidence and is not the end of the story, my beloved. They are the first note of a movement that has been building toward this moment through everything you have been through. You are going to walk into spaces and feel at home in a way you have not always felt at home, my child. You are going to speak and have people receive what you say with a quality of attention that reflects the value of what you are offering. You are going to be seen not by everyone, but by the right ones. And it's going to feel when it arrives less like triumph and more like recognition, beloved, like finally being in the right room for what you carry. That is what I have been preparing. That is what has been worth the waiting. Isaiah 61 says, arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you, my beloved. The light has come. It came when I placed you exactly where you are for exactly this moment. Arise, my daughter, in the full knowledge of what you carry. Shine not through effort, but through alignment with what I placed in you. The people who need to see the real thing are about to encounter it, my child, and you are ready. Not because you arrived at readiness after a long journey of preparation, though the journey was real and the preparation was genuine. You are ready because I decided You were ready before you took your first breath, my beloved. And everything since then has been the slow and patient and thorough arrival of the moment in which that readiness becomes visible to the environments I prepared for it. Type, "It is already done." Not as the hope that it will be done, but as the declaration of someone who has received in this moment the settled knowing that the story I authored does not end with the dismissal, that the record held by the one who watched it all is the final word, that the high-profile person who cannot stop thinking about you is a signal of a larger movement already in motion. It is already done. Type it before you go. There's something I want to ask you to do. There is a name on your heart right now. Maybe a name you have been holding all the way through this message. Someone whose face appeared to you in certain moments when what was being said felt true. Someone whose season of not being seen you know because you know them. Sow a seed today specifically for that person. Not as a transaction where your giving produces a result you can track, but as a declaration of faith that what I do in lives like yours, I can also do in theirs. That the qualities I have placed in them, even the ones that are not yet visible to the people who most need to see them, are real and are appointed and are on their way to the moment of being recognized. Visit the link in the description below or scan the QR code on screen to sow that seed. The name on your heart is not random. I placed it there, and the seed you sow in their name today carries the full weight of what you received in this message, the full weight of your journey, the full weight of your testimony, that the one who holds the real account is the one who has the final word. Sow that seed for them and carry forward everything that was spoken here. It was always true. Now you know it. Amen.